Hi, I'm Tamara Lackey, and on this episode of reDefine show for Adorama TV, I speak with Jaleel King, photographer, educator, and motivator about making portraits with perfect strangers, marketing, and moving past limitations. Check it out. Hi, Jaleel.
Hey, Tamara.
How are you?
I am awesome. How are you?
I'm doing really well. You know, most people don't ask it back, so thank you. It's very nice of you.
That's good. I know that we're in WPPI.
Yeah, we're still here. It's
still here.
been a long week.
And I know that well, you're very popular.
So are you.
And as such, I know that it's almost like a rat race where you almost have not a second to breathe. So I caught my 100 miles an hour early, and now I'm like slowing down.
Slowing down.
Slowing down.
What were you teaching out here?
So this year I did my first photo walk in Vegas. So I did a photo walk, and I did a photo walk on making portraits out of perfect strangers.
Okay.
So the concept,
street photography. That's your thing. That's a big
street
thing.
photography and portraits is what
Yeah.
I love doing. I'm still working on getting better with it, but I think a lot of the approach can lead into helping other people with how they deal with people, as well as how they deal with clients. So I'm looking at it from a few different perspectives. And so my thought process with this was getting people comfortable with approaching people in relations to being confident about what you do.
Because that can be really intimidating
It can be
to a lot of people.
extraordinarily intimidating. And some people make things difficult, let's be honest. But if you are pleasant, you tend to get people who are okay. The other problem is that you need to be quick about it, because some people don't have a whole lot of time, but some people will make the time. But by doing that, I think that you could present the same perspectives with clients, you know, on the confidence level and what you want to get across, as well as how you deal with it. And the other aspect of it is almost like an organic marketing situation when you deal with people, because I've been out and I've shot people on the streets in portrait style, as opposed to being more of a voyeur, which is what I like to do, where I've given my email address to get the photo, and they've gotten the photo, and sometimes it comes back, you know, hey, we're looking for a photographer. So it's a natural, organic type of thing. And then the new thing that I added was a Fuji Instax printer. And so what I'll do is I'll try to print out, you know, right on it. And a friend of mine gave me a good idea, so I think I'm gonna get some stickers that I can stick on the back of the print, so that if they ever needed to do that,
so you have your info right there.
So you have the info right there. So it's
funny how we've gotten so full circle that when you hand somebody a print, they're like, oh wow.
Oh wow.
Like,
absolutely.
Like, you know, because that was there for years and years and years, but now it's so exciting.
It's so exciting. But I think that's always been important, is having the tangibility of a print.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember that moment. And, you know, I have some friends, and they have a cabin on a lake, and I took a bunch of photos, and as a gift I had the photos printed, and I was visiting them at their home when they were, you know, at the time, and the day before, the day I was leaving, the prints arrived. And so for me, my moment was I literally wanted to cry, because I looked at the prints, got them nice and big, not little tiny prints, nice and big.
Not some scrappy prints.
No, not some scrappy prints, and couldn't believe I shot them. Because it's something to have that's tangible, but when you have that, you can say, oh, wow. Actually, it looks good, because there's a whole difference.
I'm really good at this.
I'm really good at this, but it also impactfully, there's a difference between looking at an image on a screen versus having an image,
having a real life thing
in your hands, and it just is more impactful. And honestly, I wish more people would print their own work, or get, you know, really dive currency to getting print. So
yeah, and it's funny too, because when you get an image that you love and you print it well and you now possess it, it's a whole different level of value to you.
It's a whole different value
than that thing on the USB stick in your drawer.
No, I mean, and on top of that, most people, they'll get them, they'll put them on Facebook or whatever social media that they choose to do, and then it's kind of done and over with, versus having something on, you know, on your wall or something like that. I can't even tell you how many times I've gone into people's homes, and literally they have something not their family on their walls, which is kind of a little disappointing to me.
Yeah. So you have been shooting for how long now?
I've been shooting for well over 15, I would say a good 15 plus years.
Okay.
But where I've been comfortable enough to call myself a photographer, probably within the last 8 years.
Okay.
So, you know, despite that, I always felt uncomfortable, you know, not, you know, there's always that idea of where you want to be versus where you are.
Imposter syndrome. Like, this is what I think the definition is. And if I'm not there.
I'm not, And so I'd rather, you know, to the point where you start becoming comfortable with saying this is how much it is versus, you know, oh, I don't know, being apprehensive about it.
Yeah.
So, but it definitely took some time before I was like comfortable where I can say, hey, this is what I do and this is what I love to do. And I'm okay with, you know, having that mantle of saying photographer.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking earlier about the difficulty that you can encounter with accessibility in a lot of places. How have you found that to, well, maybe just back up a little bit there, in terms of some of the issues you have to encounter and how daunting it can be sometimes to, we're talking about like ramps that go up and,
with carpet on them.
Gear.
And gear.
Like, was that ever something that you thought, okay, that might just be too hard to go after this full time?
I think that any artist, it's the adversities are what define us to a certain extent. You know what I mean? There's always going to be something that you can't do, I can't do, regardless of what people have a perception of. You know what I mean? I can actually swim. You might not be able to swim.
I don't swim well.
Right.
That's
so, you know what I mean? So you never know what somebody else may bring or what somebody else's quote unquote disability is. So for me, I like to look at the challenge and figure out what I can do to get around it.
Yeah.
And it may not be the most ideal situation, but I make it work for what I have. I remember distinctly, I did a thing at the time. Dean Sanders had this Better Together situation going on, and we had a group in New Jersey. I'm in Philly, so everybody's in Jersey, of course. But they did a shootout, and it was at a hotel, Asbury Park.
Okay.
And there were people who were shooting. The first point was on a balcony, and the balcony had a lip about this big to get out. And they were like, "Oh, do you want me to help you?" I said, "You know what? I got to take a deep breath. No, don't help me." So because I might be in a situation where I have to shoot like this, and this is not what I can do. You know what I mean? I have nobody to help me. So I got to figure out if this is what my client wants, how to get around it.
Right.
And so I found the window that looked out, used that as a frame, and got a good shot. And then I did some other things to kind of put my own spin on it. The other thing that they did, everybody went out to the beach, of course, the beach. The beach. And wheelchairs and beaches don't mix. My Australian trip taught me that because my wheels came back rusty.
Well, but I'm glad you say things like that, because when we're talking about this accessibility, if you're not, living this every day, you just don't even notice. No,
you don't. And, a lot of my friends become a lot more aware of certain situations. And it's funny because then they start getting angry. Because it's like, wait, no, this is not supposed to be like this.
As I was telling you, like my experience, I was just like, and everybody's okay with this? It sucks.
Everybody's to a certain extent because you don't have to deal with it. But I think that's how it is with a lot of people in life and how we become empathetic to things. Sometimes we don't care until it's somebody in our family. Now all of a sudden these things are a big issue. Your eyes are opened. Now your eyes are open. You get woke. Right, you get woke. And sometimes, the least of us have to be taken care of because ultimately it becomes the greater good for most of us. I'm not a protester, but I remember one time I did some protesting for accessibility with like Greyhound buses and stuff. And I distinctly remember having a conversation with one old bus driver, and he says, like, look, so they put these these handicap ramps all over the place in some town, and they don't even use it. Look at all the costs. And I'm thinking, like, now, if you had a place even now that didn't have these cutouts, people, even if you don't have someone with a disability, you would be like, well, why aren't they here? Because they're so convenient for women who have, carriages, for people who deliver stuff. So all these things. Roller bags. So there's so much that it now encompasses because of the idea of accessibility. Yeah. That now everybody uses, and if it wasn't there, it would be so much more difficult for everybody involved. Yeah. So sometimes you have to look at that greater good. Right. I can't believe someone's arguing against it, though. It was funny to see that, you know what I mean? But, you're always going to find somebody who has to argue against the greater good. Yeah. So you knew that there'd be challenges, but you also were like, okay, I'm just going to have to figure it out. I'm going to have to figure it out. I mean, part of that was like, there was a photographer who came out to do a shoot. I went to school originally for video production, thinking that, I got sick before and I lost a really good job. And I thought that if I got sick again, this is something that I could do from a hospital. I hadn't gotten sick since that time. But photography, no matter what I did, was always the underpinning of everything. You know what I mean? It was a hobby, but I loved it, and that was what I did. I mean, spending money on film. I mean, that started with film. Yeah. So that's what I loved, and so it was a work of patience and love. And when I saw her come out, she had a light, her camera, and if she was by herself, and I said, if she could do it, I can do it. And then I saw what she got out of it, and it was something I personally never seen, as far as the process is concerned. You see stuff in magazines all the time. Sure. But the process was different. Yeah. And then, to see it, I was like, I can do this. Yeah. And then she was my standard, because if this is what she was able to do, I should be able to do that. And so that was what my goal was.
Thanks so much for joining us. Join us here next time for our part 2 with Jaleel, a powerful conversation you will not want to miss. And between now and then, don't forget to subscribe to Adorama TV.